Hello and welcome to a new episode of SportsDay Rangers. I'm John Blake.
And I'm Evan Grant.
After the excitement of adding 3 pitchers at the trade deadline, the Rangers bats reminded us last week of why the club has been just outside the third AL wildcard spot for much of the last month.
After an 8-5 win over the Yankees in the first game of a key 10-game homestand, Texas managed just 9 runs in the next 5 games, going 1-4.
And as of Monday morning, the Rangers were 6.5 games behind Houston in the American League West and 2.5 games behind the Yankees for the third wild card spot, but in 5th place with the Guardians in between. This week on the podcast, we'll look back at the last week. Plus, we'll talk to Rangers Hall of Famer Ian Kinsler in studio, which is the first for this little podcast. He was a second baseman on some of the Rangers' best teams and 2 World Series teams in 2010, 2011, and we went into the Hall of Fame together in 2022.
Do you think that was a highlight for him, that he can claim that you were his Hall of Fame mate?
It's not a bad thing, and at least I had my speech all in a thing. He had his on little note sheets.
They got a little bit mixed up.
And he got a little bit mixed up during the speech.
Hopefully he won't get mixed up in studio.
Right.
In our voting to determine the top regular season moment in Rangers history, we're down to 2. It's the finals. More on that in the archives in Arlington.
SportsDay Rangers is our weekly spinoff of the Dallas Morning News SportsDay Insider podcast. You can find it on the SportsDay Insiders feed wherever you consume podcasts.
If you want to interact with the show, you can find each of us on X. When I'm not yelling at people, I'm at Evan_P_Grant, and John is at Ranger Blake. You can also reach out to the Dallas Morning News on any of the social media channels that the paper is on, which is all of them.
So as we look back to last week, Evan, you were on assignment for much of the week, but you were certainly watching the team and everything as it got off to a nice start against the Yankees, won a couple of games. You know, Devin Williams for the New York was a big part of both of those wins for Texas. But then I think the weekend was a little disappointing, getting swept by a really good Philadelphia team that's got a big lead in the National League West. But club has scored 2 or fewer runs in 5 straight games now. Went 5 for 38 with runners in scoring position that span, hit a couple of home runs, and it's the same kind of story. They got off to a good start, but not being able to put any kind of consistency together on offense.
Yeah, John, as we record this, and the Rangers go into this series with the Diamondbacks, they're going to cross 120 games for the season. So we're 3/4 of the way through the season now, and I'm ready to pronounce that this offense does not work. Just simply does not work. Now, I'm going to throw the caveat in there, the disclaimer, whatever you want to call it. Look, this team could still go to the playoffs and they could still make a run. But this offense, as constructed, does not work. I'm still not sure why it doesn't work and why it hasn't worked. But for me, the thing that I'm now focusing on is why this team doesn't seem to get better as the game goes on. We saw that play out very distinctly in the Phillies series with runs in the first inning and then being shut out the rest of the way. They don't score as many runs the second time through the lineup as they do the first time, which is when they should be, a little bit more informed about the starting pitcher and maybe even picked up some, we talk a lot about how Rangers pitchers are tipping. I don't know that we ever talk about how other pitchers are tipping against the Rangers. And so I've just kind of come to the feeling that this offense just doesn't work for some reason.
Do you think Evan Carter getting back in? I mean, he works the counts a little more, gets a few more walks, but from a power standpoint and coming up with that with some sustainability there, is that going to help?
Well, I think there are some external factors, right? We've looked at ballpark factors early this season. I haven't looked at them again just lately here, but there are some indicators that Globe Life Field is playing larger than other parks this year. And so a team built on slugging, playing in a very slugger-unfriendly park, that probably isn't going to get you great numbers. On the flip side, look, if you get Evan Carter back and you can manage to keep everybody else healthy for this week, as we've said here before, it'll be the first time the Rangers have their full lineup on the field this year, their full expected lineup. So maybe that creates some kind of difference. But for me, again, it comes back to we're seeing Marcus Semien go back into the same place he was at the start of the year, and we're seeing Adolis Garcia really struggle at the plate.
And you looked at this weekend series, and yes, the Phillies did pitch 2 lefties, but you looked at the way that Rob Thompson used his bullpen, and he went very heavy left-handed. He was more willing to have his lefties face the righties and to keep Tellez and Peterson and Josh Smith to some extent on the bench, and that's kind of a telling sign that
I think it's a telling sign. We've talked about this for months now, and that it was a coming factor, and that in the second half we've seen teams line up lefty pitchers to face the Rangers. The Phillies, I think, manipulated their rotation a little bit so that they could have lefty to start the first 2 games, and then have Wheeler with a full bullpen behind him in Game 3. And so, we're seeing it with how starters match up against the Rangers, and we're seeing it now with how bullpens are used against the Rangers. And Bruce Bochy has no platoon options against lefties. He just doesn't.
So, looking ahead, Arizona, then they've got to go to Toronto next weekend. So you've still got some tough sledding here. But again, that wild card, there isn't a dominant team in the American League, and I think that gives you some hope. But
I'm going to make a prediction here, John. I'm going to make a prediction that the Rangers have 6 games left against the Astros. Those 6 games are going to determine who wins the 3rd wild card spot. Because I think when it's all said and done, and I don't say this lightly because I've not been a big fan of the way Jerry DiPoto constructs teams, but the Mariners are playing really well.
Yes, they are.
And they appear to be hot. And they appear to be peaking. And I think the Yankees will get enough together to nail down that 2nd wild card spot. And so I think the 3rd wild card spot is going to come down to the Rangers and the Astros. There's 6 games remaining between the two, split here and Houston equally, and the Rangers are going to have to go head-to-head. And maybe that's the kind of thing that actually gets this team a little bit, I hate to use the word fired up, but maybe gets this team to seem a little bit more urgent and invested in games, and maybe that's a propellant into the playoffs.
Let's talk about Eovaldi a little bit. You did a big piece on him in the Monday paper. It was online before that. I still read the paper, but it was a nice presentation by the layout guys. So Nathan Eovaldi is having kind of an historic season.
Get the angle right.
If you look at the the stats about lowest ERA after 19 starts, and you look at the names on the list, it's Bob Gibson and Louis Tiant in 1968, which was the definite year of the pitcher. They had to lower the mounds the next year. Vita Blue in 1971, which was a ridiculous year, and then Zach Greinke. So
Blue won MVP and Cy Young.
Right. And, well, so did Gibson. But it's a historical year, and you watch the guy pitch, 4 pitches, all on the corners. It's been a pretty amazing run for him. But the Rangers, as we know, have never. I haven't worked for a team that had a Cy Young winner since 1980, when it was Steve Stone with the Baltimore Orioles.
You're the curse.
He went 25 and
maybe
7.
Now that you're officially retired this year, the curse will be broken.
And it was back-to-back years because Mike Flanagan won in 79 for the Orioles. But I've had, Fergie Jenkins finished second. He should have won it in 1974. Yu Darvish finished second. He was, he
led the league in strikeouts, which is a big stat for Cy Young voters.
Right. But can Eovaldi overcome this stigma here with Tariq Skubal and Garrett Crochet and others? And, what is your thoughts on that?
I mean, assuming Nathan gets to 162 innings and officially qualifies, which at this rate, he'll just eke over that line. If he gets there, I think it's basically a 2-man race between him and Skubal. I think Crochet is would be a unanimous third, pretty much. The problem is not so much that Nathan's it's not just the lack of qualifying innings. It's that Skubal is basically neck and neck with him in just about every other category, or leads in every other category except ERA, with a significant number of innings pitched advantage. Skubal's got more than 30 innings more than Nate. And listen, I think in both of their, as I broke this down, I think the innings thing is a very important element for Cy Young voters. I think strikeouts are a very important element for Cy Young voters because it factors into WAR and it factors into FIP, which are two more new age metrics that people look at rather than just ERA. And Skubal's got edges there. And I think when it comes to the hype train or publicity campaigns, Skubal's the reigning Cy Young Award winner, so he's got that going for him. He's kind of been crowned as one of baseball's, blessed superstars. He was a starting pitcher in the All-Star game.
Correct.
All of that works in his favor. To Nate's credit, he's been named Big Game Nate. He pitches in big games. He comes up with big wins. And I think that will, voters aren't going to say, well, he's Big Game Nate, I'm going to vote for him. But I do think that all of this stuff gets embedded in the minds of voters, and it helps determine some tiebreakers. But I think that it's certainly, as much as I wanted to see Darvish win a Cy Young while he was here, that Cy Young candidacy was basically based on the fact that he struck a lot of guys out. This, I think, is it's the best pitching season I've ever witnessed up close. And so he's a very, very strong candidate. I just don't know I think it would take a field where there wasn't somebody who had the credentials that Skubal already has, having the kind of year that he's having. It takes, I guess, a little bit of a weaker field.
Right. And you never know with the composition of who's voting for this either. That's always a big thing now because there aren't as many newspaper guys doing the voting. It's kind of a mixed bag for some of these awards.
And the BBWA, which conducts the vote, has had something of a makeover from where it was 20 years ago. At 20 years ago, MLB.com writers weren't part of BBWA.
Exactly. It was all sport. It was all newspaper guys.
And you've got people who work for more metric centric websites like Fangraphs and other sites along those lines, Baseball Prospectus, who also now in some markets will have votes.
And that may help Eovaldi a little bit as opposed to just the three. And wins at this point, of course, are even more moot than they ever were.
Crochet leads and wins. Max Fried had a chance to tie him on Sunday and didn't. So
Fried has 12 wins. Yep. So it'll be interesting to see how it comes down, and maybe the Rangers can. I mean, Rangers have won a lot of MVPs over the years. They've won a few Rookies of the Year in the BBWA voting, but the only other team that's never won a Cy Young, which is amazing, is the Colorado Rockies. So as we move on here with Sports Day Rangers, our guest this week in studio is Ian Kinsler. He's one of the leaders on those Rangers teams in the early 2009 to 2013 period, and one of the best leadoff hitters in club history. As we've been talking about lineup construction and everything, having Kins at the top of the lineup with 30-30 ability really made a difference, and he was, as we said, he was a Club Hall of Fame inductee in 2022, and we'll talk to Ian coming up next.
Be sure to stick around after the interview to find out which two moments from our Rangers bracket of 16 originals has advanced to the finals to determine the greatest regular season moment in Rangers history. We've set up a bracket of the franchise top moments, and this week you can vote on the final moment and win some prizes. The grand prize. What is the grand prize, John? Does it include a artifact tour at the ballpark?
Yes, it includes a tour, tickets, obviously, to a game, a behind-the-scenes tour, and hopefully a few more little surprises, I guess. Where it depends on, we'll see when the recipient, if he wants to do it this year, or he wants to wait till next year. But we'll blow out the bells and whistles here for the tour.
Maybe I'll even join the tour so that I can heckle you during the tour. That would add something, I think.
Well, you are actually you or Sean, who's ever working that night, because you're unpredictable sometimes on home games. Who's ever there that night, I told the powers that be here that we will involve you guys in at least the press box part and
very
things
exciting.
Like that.
Very exciting. I was on assignment last week, and we're going to get into this Ian interview. I will just say that as we come up this weekend, I will have a story on where I think the Rangers are trying to employ or deploy a little bit of a of what may be a competitive advantage in drafting and the potential development of pitchers. That's where I was last week, out in Arizona, where it was 117 degrees on Tuesday or Thursday, I should say. But more on that next week.
And we'll talk to Ian next. So this is an historic moment, Evan, in our podcast. We actually have our guest in-house today, and he played 14 seasons, most notably for the Rangers, the Tigers, and then won a world championship with the Red Sox in 2018 before finishing with the Padres. 1,999 hits.
It's Ian Kinsler, for crying out loud.
In 1,888 games, four-time All-Star, two-time Gold Glove winner, now a special assistant for the Rangers since 2023, Ian Kinsler. Kins, thanks for joining us here in studio.
How awkward is it when John goes through all that stuff?
I've heard him say it before.
Yeah.
That's kind of his thing.
He likes to roll through the history.
Well, it's history, and it's just kind of impact the play. And he's also a 2002 Rangers Hall of Fame inductee. 2022 Rangers Hall of Fame inductee.
With you, JB, yeah.
Yes, yes. At least, like I was telling Evan before, I didn't have my
Did that kind of taint the Hall of Fame experience?
No, it made it so much better. It made it so much better.
Thanks for coming in. It's great that you're here.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
So,
like on the one day you're in Dallas this whole summer. It's great.
Yeah, in and out.
Yeah. So let's kind of start with, we had Josh Hamilton. We honored him, speaking of the Rangers Hall of Fame, this past weekend. We gave him his Hall of Fame jacket. And just looking back at those teams, 10, 11, and the video that they showed of Josh, it wasn't just the offense, it was the defense and everything he did. But those clubs, and as we talk about this year's club, those clubs had several guys that were capable of carrying a team for a week, for a series, and that made a big difference.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. And we also had a lot of players in that lineup who, if they weren't swinging the bat, if they weren't hot, there was still a way for them to impact the game. Whether it was drawing a walk or getting on by an error and stealing a base or scoring from first on a double or playing fantastic defense, changing the game in many different ways. For me, looking back, that team had a lot of dirt on their unis. We were running hard. We were taking extra bases. We were sliding and diving everywhere. We had a great will to win, and it was a lot of fun when you get on a team like that. And the ball starts rolling that way. It's just so much fun, and you feel like you can come back at any moment. You feel like you can kind of put your foot on someone's throat at any moment and kind of pull away. And like you said, we had so many guys that were able to just carry us at any moment. I mean, Mike Napoli, Nelson Cruz, Josh Hamilton, Mike Young.
In 10 it was Vlad, and 11 it was Beltre.
Yeah, Beltre, Vlad. Me and Elvis were just there to set the stage, but we also had a way of producing runs, scoring runs, and Elvis is flying around the bases, putting pressure on the other team, and whether it's home runs or doubles, you think of carrying a team. Elvis, me and Elvis were kind of the thorn in the other team's side, and with that being said, like, we could carry the team too. If the other guys were kind of cold or it was a tough stretch, it was a ace type pitcher, we could create some havoc and put some runs on the board. So it was just it wasn't a one-dimensional offense.
Well, when you're a 30-30 guy, you've got multiple ways to put pressure on offenses, on defenses, and pitching staffs. But I also thought that, and you and I have talked about this numerous times, you also you embodied just what you talked about, stepping on the opponent's throats and getting under their skin. You were the instigator in a lot of ways, and you knew that was your role. And how important is that role?
Man, I loved it. I think it's just so important. You got to have a guy that's there to win from pitch one, you know, and is ready to fire, is ready to go. A little bit annoying, you know, a lot of emotion, a lot of drama, tension maybe from the other team is I think important. And, you know, Elvis was similar. You know, he did it in a little bit. He did it with a smile on his face.
You did it with a sneer sometimes.
Exactly.
You did it with a smile.
Exactly. So, you know, it was a little Jekyll and Hyde there, but just to give them something to think about. And it was so nice having those guys behind me because they had to pay attention to me. They couldn't walk me. They couldn't just put me on base. I would steal second. Now you're dealing with some big bats. And, you know, the way our lineup was constructed, it was very difficult for the other team to game plan against us. And, you know, that once they felt like they had some breathing room, you know, the bottom of the lineup would just kill them. And once it turned over, it was a nightmare for them. And, you know, we're playing in the old ballpark here. So we make them throw 30 pitches in an inning. These guys are melting.
Yeah.
And we knew it. And we took advantage of it. That was that was something that we didn't really discuss. I think mentally we had ourselves fooled that it wasn't as hot as it was. And we use it to our advantage.
But you did discuss knowing, like, your roles, right? You did discuss things about that would help you guys get better in games.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I mean,
it was a lot of discussion in game, a lot of discussion. That, you know, me and Elvis were constantly talking about how to steal bases, what we saw when we were on first. If, you know, now you can't peek into the catcher's sign giving because they're using the buttons.
Were you good at picking up signs?
Yeah.
You were?
Yeah. At first. At second, we never did that. That was the crazy part, is that in Texas, we never relayed signs. When I got traded to Boston, that was the first time that we had some sort of system of relaying from second base. And you know, Mitch came up to me and he's like, "It's okay, you'll get it. You'll figure it out." He's like, "I know we just raked in Texas, but like, you're a good ball player. You got good instincts. You'll figure it out quickly." And, you know, there was constant scandal around us that, you know, people thought we were cheating at the ballpark in Texas, but the wind was just blowing out, and we were just hammering balls into that jet stream. So maybe it seemed like we were doing some sort of, you know, circus play, but we just smothered people.
But was that team good at, like, picking up, like, tipping and picking up things that pitchers were doing? I think Michael studied that, but, like, you know, we always hear, like, right now, and this is a big thing for me, like, well, was DeGrom tipping on a day when he wasn't great, or was this reliever doing that? But I never hear stories about other teams saying that when they face the Rangers, they felt like they were tipping or anything. And so I'm wondering, like, were you guys good at picking up that stuff?
I mean, we really weren't. That wasn't, like, our focus. We knew that we were good enough to just go play and beat you. Like, we didn't need to do all that. And Josh didn't even know a pitch was being I mean, a guy hits a homer off the upper deck, and we're like, "Josh, what pitch was that?" He's like, "I don't know. It was a changeup." No, it was a slider, Josh. That one had some spin on it and it was moving into you. It's called a slider. And he's like, "Oh, I don't know. I just see it and hit it."
And
he
hammered it.
Okay,
was that the one that went
for the help.
or like the left center field?
I mean, all of them.
Yeah.
It didn't matter.
The right center, I mean, yeah.
You know, in Baltimore, he was just unconscious and hit, you know, just driving balls everywhere, 4 home runs. And you're like, "Josh, what was that?" He's like, I don't know.
That was the most amazing game ever.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
You guys, you get Cliff Lee in 2010, and that was kind of the big. I remember the clubhouse and everything, and at that point, I think that ball club felt they could win.
Well, what was the clubhouse like the day that you guys got Cliff? Because it was a little bit of a surprise. We had JD on. We talked about that, and John's brought this up before. The day you got Cliff, like, how did that impact the team?
Up to that point, we hadn't made a move.
Right.
You know, my previous seasons,
we'd gotten Benji Molina to catch, I think, before that, hadn't we?
Yeah, we got Benji to catch.
A month earlier.
But I'm saying the previous years, there was no trade deadline big move. Like, I think Matt Stairs was like our biggest move up to that point. We got Benji. We all felt great about that. Obviously, a winner, veteran, knows how to handle a staff, great teammate. So it felt stable. And then, you know, back in the day, there's there's packets that get put in the middle of the clubhouse as far as news clippings.
Right. Oh, I
and so
remember
you get to
those.
the clubhouse during
Yeah.
the trade deadline. The first thing you do is you start reading the packet.
Yeah.
You're like, what are
Wait
we
a
doing?
minute, you read the newspaper clippings?
I mean, just the headlines. And so we're, who are we in on? What's going on? Where the movement is? Do we have a real opportunity to get Cliff Lee? And when we made that move, the energy level went up a couple clicks. I mean, it was instantly, we got Cliff, like it's game on, and it spread very quickly. And we were like, when's this dude flying in? Is he getting here today? He needs a pitch today. It'd be great. But yeah, there was definitely a lot of excitement in the clubhouse, a lot of buzz. There was a buzz.
Did you guys, and one more for me on this, and the club had never won a postseason series, and I know players say, well, I wasn't there. You guys didn't feel, did you feel that this team had never won? And
I felt it.
Yeah.
I felt it. That was extremely important to me.
Yeah.
Because that was a historic moment. Like you're starting a new chapter. You're creating something new for the organization, something that's never been done. And that's the goal, right? Is to try to do things that have never been done. And being drafted by the Rangers, knowing the history versus the Yankees, going to Tampa, like doing all of those things, it was like home for me, right? I was drafted here. I came up through here. I knew the history, and I wanted to be a part of that team that won the first postseason. Obviously, I wanted to win the first World Series for the organization. So yeah, it was important to me. I don't, we might at the time we might fake it and say we don't care. We're worried about today, and that might.
I think
honestly,
I wrote that quote down a couple of times.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't care. It's all about today, Evan. But in the moment when we're in the clubhouse and you're asking us these types of questions, we are psychologically tricking ourselves. Like today is the most important. The first pitch is the most important, then the second pitch, and the third pitch, and you got to go pitch by pitch. You're not worried about the history per se until it's made.
Right.
And off the field, it's something that internally you're thinking about, or at least I was.
You knew it. Yeah, I mean, you knew it.
I knew it, and I knew. And, you guys were tough on us when we were facing the Yankees in 10 in the ALCS and asking all these ridiculous questions about where they can't get past the Yankees. I'm like, can't get past the Yankees? This is freaking 10 years ago,
15, but
whatever.
Right.
Like it was a long time ago,
Yeah.
and for us, yes, we knew it. We knew there was that cloud hanging over as far as the fan base and the media, and that does affect you a little bit, but it also motivates you. There's a positive swing to that. And, we didn't care. Honestly, we didn't care, but we knew it was there.
it motivates you, and that's a positive. But did you feel a pressure to it also?
No, and I think that's where the snarky answers came from. Is like we didn't feel that pressure. We were completely confident to a point of cockiness almost that team has nothing to do with us.
Right.
The teams of the past, we're way different than them, and we were there to prove it, and we didn't want to hear any of that. We didn't want to hear any of that. We wanted to move through it and prove that we were better than the Yankees. That's really what it came down to.
John?
Well, looking ahead, 10 and 11 and 12 weren't able to kind of finish it. 12 to me was kind of, and I don't want to harp on it, it was kind of a disappointing year, right? I mean, club had the best record in the American League until the last 3 games of the season. And is it hard? You guys had gone to the World Series in 10 and 11, and I worked for the Red Sox. It's hard to keep winning, and I don't think people realize that. Did you guys feel any of that when you got to 12, Ian, kind of at the end? I mean, it's a grind. It really is a grind.
It's a grind. You're playing a tremendous amount of games. There's not as much rest time in the off season to flip around and start your off season workouts and try to get ahead of it and be ready for spring training. And you kind of feel like you have some gook in your eyes when you get to spring training. You kind of need to wash your face and clear your eyes, and you still
Starting
feel,
all over again.
Yeah, you still feel kind of heavy a little bit, your body. So yes, we felt it. And a lot of people I talked to say that they thought 2012 was our best club.
Oh, we had Joe Nathan, which
Yeah,
we were good.
Yeah, and you just
We had
said
Darvish.
We had the best record in the American League,
Right.
and it just didn't feel the same.
Yeah,
We had the talent, but I will never say that team was the best team.
right.
It just because the track like it just wasn't.
Right.
You can talk about the talent and the wins and all that stuff, but come to postseason player at the end of the
Right.
season, we just didn't have that extra, I don't know, guts or something. Like it was a little hollow, but we were a tremendous team. I mean, on paper, we were fantastic, but on paper is one thing, and
Right.
actually doing it on the field is another.
But see, that's just to go back to what you were just talking about, right? Now that whole team has basically been together for 2 full years, right? And now all the stuff that we're talking about, well, you couldn't win in 10, couldn't win in 11. Now all that stuff you are carrying that is associated with you. And as that started to kind of fall apart in the last 2 weeks in September, I do imagine, and I don't know that guys ever really address this, but I do imagine that you guys did feel the pressure, that you did feel like this is slipping away a little bit.
Yeah, it just wasn't as much fun. It felt a little bit more like work, if that makes sense. And
100%.
yeah, in 10 and 11, it was just electric, and it's you're driving to the ballpark and you're just so excited to be
Yeah.
there. 12, we were just good. There was nothing else really to it. And it could have easily went a different direction, and it was unfortunate at the end, and we caught some bad breaks. I mean, we had it set up for us. It was Joe Saunders versus Yu Darvish, and our whole lineup was hitting over 300 against Joe Saunders with huge slug. I mean, we could have easily just routed that game, walked away with it, and we just kind of came out flat. I mean,
And coming off the Oakland series, it was trying to get motivated was hard. I'm sure. And
just try to fire up the engines after that Oakland series and know what was just kind of slipped through our fingers. It was a little bit difficult. It was.
When you play that back, right? I'm thinking about this, and I still go back. That night in Baltimore, I think changed Josh's season, and not for the better. It was the greatest accomplishment I've ever seen on a field, and I wonder, I wonder if it ever like subconsciously left you guys like, what else is there? We just saw, can't get any better than this. We can't be any better than this.
It was. Yeah, 12 was bizarre because we just won. Like we were just better than everybody, and we just kind of, yes, we still had that aura, we still had that drive, but there was a little bit of subtraction there.
It's why it's hard to win championships, man.
It's hard to win multiples, and that's why dynasties are just so awesome to me. People get sick of the Patriots winning. People, start talking trash about the Chiefs or whatever. Everybody talks trash about the Yankees dynasties, and they're sick of watching these teams. And I'm like, what are you talking about? This is what it's about. Like, this is when you really find out who the best is. I love watching dynasties, but looking back at 10, 11, and 12, it was, 12 is just kind of slipped through our fingers. And, we were a better team than how it turned out.
I want to go forward for a minute because you're working for the Rangers now. You're back with the Rangers in a special assistant role, which is great. And I want to get your take on this year's team to whatever feel you have. Is it as frustrating for you to watch as it's been for fans?
It's frustrating. Yeah, it's frustrating. I played in Detroit. The first year in Detroit, they had won 3 consecutive Central titles. The fourth year, my first year there, we won the Central on the last day of the season over the Royals. But we were a much better team than that. As far as on paper, same kind of deal we talk about in 2012, where, then we go to Baltimore, we get swept in the first round of the postseason. I mean, we're talking about David Price, Parcello, Verlander, Sanchez, Scherzer. Like, we were loaded on the mound.
Right.
Our offense was loaded. We had guys all over the diamond. But there just was a lack of, drive. There was a lack of guts or a lack of grit. And it's super frustrating to watch a team that on paper should be performing at a higher level, and they're just not. and it's frustrating. And I can imagine as a player on those teams, it was extremely frustrating because you know who's around you, you know what is possible, and it's just not clicking. And I don't know, it's a very difficult thing to try to figure out. It's hard to put your finger on what it is and why it's not clicking. And that's the frustrating part because these guys want to win. They want to perform well. We want them to perform well. On our side, CY tries to do as much as he can to ignite and get him going with different moves and, giving him players and whatever the case may be to try to get a little fire going. And then the lighter clicks on a little bit and the flame just never gets there.
And I think that it's not, when you talk about fire, people are going to interpret it like this team lacks energy or anything. I don't think that's the case necessarily, but it just doesn't, for some reason it doesn't function, right? And when you're talking about lighter, you're talking about like the ignition that the offense is just going to take off, and it works for a little bit, and then it's like everybody backslides. And there isn't, to John's point from earlier, it just doesn't feel like there's been players on this team or last year's team that took over games, with the exception of Seager, that take over games for periods of time. It's just nobody gets hot and carries a team.
Well,
and you've got to have that when you don't have a bunch of on-base guys.
Yes. And this is sensitive for me. I root for these guys. I want these guys to be successful. And it's, when you get away from the game, it's easy to be negative, right? You always try to be positive. You try to be on their side as much as possible. And with that being said, looking back and being a little bit more analytical about it, since 2023, since September of 2023, the end of the season, they went into a terrible rut. In September, they almost fell out of the postseason.
Right.
They were leading the division the whole year, banging. They were the best offense in the game. They didn't have to run. They didn't have to do it. They were hitting doubles and homers everywhere. It was slug. It was quick runs. And then September hit, and it just kind of shut down. Then they had a fantastic run in the postseason, and it was incredible run, right?
Sparked by Garcia, who took over and carried the club, and then you had Evan Carter, who you got some unexpected, and Corey and those guys.
You're so right.
But there's where a guy carried a team.
That's exactly when you talk about carrying a team. I know you see it that way, where you need a lineup of guys that can carry the team at any given moment. Garcia, Seager, Carter, Simeon would even carry the team a little bit. Right. You had guys, Josh Young was banging the ball around, and you got different guys that the other team has to game plan against. It becomes very difficult. But since September 23, then I don't want to exclude the postseason. That's hard to do. But if you just take the regular season performance from September 23, 2024 to right now to 25, there's something missing. And I think Evan's a big part of that. I think Wyatt's a big part of that. These guys are electric players, younger. They're still learning. They didn't get a lot of seasoning in the minor leagues.
Yep.
These guys are still trying to get their feet under them and understand what it takes to be a consistent big leaguer. And that's the difference at this level, is just consistency. Once you learn how to be super consistent, you see Corey every day. His at-bats are pretty much identical every time he goes to the plate. Yeah, he has these weird little cold stretches where he's swinging and missing for a game, maybe a game and a half, and then he kind of clicks right back in, and he's very consistent at what he does. And some of the guys on the club are still working through that and trying to figure that out. But there's a lot of talent there.
Does it put more pressure? And you were talking about your first year in Detroit. We had really good pitching. Does it put more pressure on an offense when you're getting historical seasons from Eovaldi, DeGrom, your bullpen? Your defense has been really good, among the top in the game. Does that put more pressure? Have you been on clubs where it puts more pressure on you offensively? If we could just score X number, to get over this hump.
Yeah, I do think there's kind of an an unspoken type of feel to when DeGrom, Eovaldi are on the mound. You get one or two early, and you can let them kind of work and go to work, and it does put a little bit more press on the offense.
Well, we got to start wrapping this up. We've taken more of your time. But looking ahead now, you got into coaching, advising right after you retired at 19. You worked with the Padres, and then we were lucky enough to see why to hire you here in 23. What do you see as your kind of path? You've managed in the WBC. Your kids are still, in high school and middle school, but I've always thought you could be a big league manager if you wanted to. But do you want to do that, or what do you look? I saw where Mitch Moreland now just became a high school coach in Alabama.
Yeah.
What would you like? What are you thinking?
Right now, I love my role. I love working with CY in the front office, working with Mike Young and Nick Hudley and Skip Schumacher, and being a sounding board for Chris is a great place to be. Helping with player development a little bit. It's a great place to be, and especially with, like you said, my kids and where they're at in their lives, to be able to watch them grow in sports and school and be a part of all that decision making, I think is very important to me. But I would never say never on the manager part. I think 6 years my son will be out of the house. Depending on his path, I'm sure I'm going to still want to be involved. But at that point, I'll be 49 years old, and
wow.
It'll be. We'll see where it goes from there. I would never say I don't want to manage ever, but it's at this point I don't think it's realistic for me. I really like my role here.
This has been great. Will you promise to come back another time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Will you come sit in the studio again?
Well, it's these headphones and the microphone. This is like first class stuff.
Oh yeah, the set's really high class.
I don't know how you guys do it. It's amazing. I'll definitely come back.
All right, that'll be awesome. John, you want to take us out?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks, Ian. We appreciate it. Hopefully we'll see you at Adrian's statue, which is actually on August 22nd. For all you listening out there, it's open to the public.
Good seats still available.
It's at 2:30. Yes, it's going to be hot, but we're going to keep it really short. And I think the finished product will be something everybody will really like. And
maybe we'll get Adrian's opinion on that.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. But thanks, Ian. We appreciate you coming out, and we'll see you around the park.
Yeah, this was fun. Thanks for having me.
There's just 1 week to go in our fan vote to determine the top regular season moment in Rangers history. We started with 16 moments, and now we're down to the last 2.
The moments were selected by the editors of the Dallas Morning News because we know all, and were seeded 1 through 16. In the third round, the moments that advanced were, John, do you want to,
Well, the moments that advanced were actually the top 1 and 2 seeds. Is Kenny Rogers' perfect game in July of 1994. Topped Nolan Ryan's 7th no-hitter in May of 1991 by a 53-47% margin. And then the number 2 seed, which was the Rangers winning their first American League West Division title in September of 1996, was a big winner over Ryan's 5,000 strikeout by a 67-37 margin. So, again, I have to tip my cap. The top 2 seeds are moving on to the finals.
And one more time, you can find the bracket at dallasnews.com/sports/Rangers. All you need to do is enter your email address, and you'll be ready to vote.
And, of course, we'll reveal the winner next week. You can vote live now, and it's going to last until 11:50 p.m. Next Sunday. And as I said, we'll have the winner next week, and there'll be some prizes for some people after that, so it'll be good.
What's in the archives, John?
We
need to have like a sound effect that goes.
Well, there's a lot of. We have an archive store where we show various items over the course of the history.
I don't care about that. What's in the archives today?
Oh, today. I'm sorry. So the subject of the archives in Arlington. I guess we have talked about both these moments, and there's. At this point, Kenny's it's kind of interesting. It's one event, a very unexpected event in 1994 when Kenny pitched the perfect game. I think it was number 12 at the time, first ever by an American League.
When did the atmosphere start to get electric during that game?
Well, we were selling, and again, this was in 1994. Rangers were averaging over 40,000 people.
It was the first year of the ballpark.
First year of the ballpark. So the atmosphere, and we were in the pennant race. I mean,
even though you were under 500,
right? We were around 500, and but it really did start to. You could hear the buzz in about the seventh inning. I mean, and at that point, he hadn't really been. The big catcher Greer was in the ninth inning, but Kenny was just kind of rolling along, and you could see the crowd. And then there'd never been the Rangers had never had a no-hitter at home, and so it was a big deal. And again, Kenny hadn't been starting that long. He wasn't established yet as when he became a very bona fide starter in the American League in his career, multi-time All-Star.
But you could feel the atmosphere start to get kind of electric with each out in the seventh inning.
And it started to get a little bit. And we had been through Nolan's, for 4 or 5 years, that kind of feeling. And Nolan had taken some. Nolan normally had a walk or two, but there were a couple of times where he was retiring every batter. And the Rangers really haven't had that feeling very often. Darvish, of course, did it in Houston with 2 outs in the ninth. But the other one, again, and I applaud the fans for this, because if you were a fan of the Rangers in the late 90s, you were long suffering. The Rangers had a lot of bad ball clubs, and that 96 team really did kind of galvanize the fan base. It was the hunt for Red October. And people came out in red, and they kind of did the rise and the fall with the Rangers blowing an 8-9 game lead. But and again, this was a bizarre game, and I think it's not just the date, it's just winning that first title. And the fact that it pretty much just ran over Nolan's 5,000 strikeout and is pretty amazing. So we'll see what you guys decide to do. It's an individual moment and a team moment, and it's interesting with all the highlights we've had in this franchise's history. It encapsulates basically a 3-year period in the mid-1990s.
Well, that's when people talk about Nolan bringing legitimacy to the club, but I think when it really crystallized there. I think where it really blossomed was with the opening of the ballpark in '94, and then with the first playoff team. And so I think that makes a lot of sense, and I'm glad to see that there is a team accomplishment in the finals, because I just like the idea that people are focused on a team moment rather than just an individual moment.
So I'm kind of excited to see who wins. It's 1 versus 2 in the final for the best regular season moment. And that's going to do it for us for this week. Thank you for joining us for SportsDay Rangers.
Don't forget to check out more sports content from the Dallas Morning News, including SportsDay Insider, my podcast with columnist Kevin Sherrington, and a guest from the staff every week. It appears in the same feed that this appears. So if you type in SportsDay Insider or SportsDay Rangers, you'll get both of these podcasts.
If you have any questions for us, you can ask us on X. And remember, go to dallasnews.com/sports/Rangers to vote for your favorite moment in club history. Voting is open now.
Thanks to Ian Kinsler for joining us this week in studio. And thanks to our producer, Chris Blake, for everything he does to keep us all together. John and I will talk to you all next week.